Welcome to Secret Story. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching. Leave comments, put likes, share with friends and subscribe to the channel. Here is a new standalone story. Thanks for bearing with us. We have many more to catch and new ones, so keep reading. Thanks for your loyalty. Like and comment. But most of all enjoy. I lay on the floor sobbing. God, Albert knows. But how did he know? Who else knew? Oh God, I have fucked up so badly. I have destroyed my life. I have betrayed my loving husband and children. How could I be so selfish and deceitful? There is no way I can survive this. Sandy was standing at the door, watching me sobbing on the floor. She said nothing, and her look was one of disgust. She turned and walked away. I finally got up and sat on the sofa. It was after midnight, and I was quickly crashing. Stacy appeared at the door with 2 glasses of wine. Edna, come with me. We need to talk. I walked to Stacy, and she handed me a glass of wine. She led me to her suite on the other side of the house, and I sat on the small love seat and took a big gulp of wine. Edna, you are in big trouble here. Al loves you, but you may have made it impossible for him to keep you as his wife. From my estimation, you have been fucking around for almost a year now. I have seen your pants every week, and they always seem to be after those nights you come home late. Edna, you're having an affair with someone at the company, right? Sandy looked at me, shaking her head. Then she lit into me. I can't believe you would forsake your beautiful children and a wonderful man like Albert. Zero, I can't believe you are so selfish and stupid. Did you think you could get away with cheating forever? I cowered into the seat, knowing everything Stacy said was true and possible. I was so stupid and selfish, thinking all about Tom and me. I do not understand why I was thinking about Tom. I do not know, and none of what I have done makes any sense. Edna, you have one chance to survive this horrible betrayal you have done to your husband, family, and marriage. You better get your story right. You better tell the truth, 100% true. I love you as a friend and don't want to see this family damaged forever, so you need to tell me your whole story, leaving nothing out. That way, you will have said it aloud once before telling Albert. You don't know what he knows, but I think it is a lot, so you must be truthful. I poured another glass of wine and took a deep breath. I started. I told Stacy every detail of my affair with Tom for the next hour. I told Stacy everything we did, when, and how we did it. At the end of the long statement, I slumped back and sobbed, realizing how stupid I had been, and that Tom had used me. That was the question I had an awfully hard time answering. I don't know why.as I finished. Stacy looked at me, her mouth agape. Edna was shocked at my confession, and her eyes teared as she looked at me. What was she thinking? Did she know from my admission that my marriage to Albert was doomed and over? She took a big gulp of wine and filled her glass again. She just stared at me. Then her mouth opened, and words I never expected to hear came out. My God, Edna, I have always thought you were a respectable woman, a responsible mother, and a loving wife, but now I see you as nothing more than a who cares nothing for your family or your husband. No loving mother would ever abuse your family as you have. Edna, you don't deserve salvation. You should be thrown into the street and trampled, but the masses of wonderful friends and family you have deceived. I am having difficulty looking at you now and do not know my future here in the household. Not only have you destroyed your family's future, but you have also destroyed mine. Right now, I hate you, Edna, please leave my room. I only hope that somehow you can survive this mess. Not for you but for the sake of those you have betrayed. Stacy stood and walked to the door, opening it. Please leave now. Albert and your children deserve much better than you have given them. You have been good to them, but you were not theirs exclusively as you should have been. I have been a better mother to them than you, and that is sad. Now, please leave. I started to cry, tears ran down my cheeks. This woman I have grown to love as part of my family has told me the truth. making me realize that what I had done was much worse than I had ever seen. That I also realized that Tom had only used my body and didn't care about my soul. But he didn't care about what happened to me and never worried about his wife or kids finding out. He must have controlled them as he controlled me. Please leave. I looked at Stacy as I stood and walked to the door. I am so sorry, Stacy. I was blind to the truth, and now that I can see things clearly, I may have destroyed the most valuable treasures in the world. I don't know what to do. I walked out without another word. I awoke at 9:30 a.m. I heard talking outside my office. I showered, dressed, and closed the sofa bed. I opened the door, and Caroline was there, coffee. She handed me a large cup and smiled, "Good morning." "Well, we will see about that." "I am not sure." "Want to talk about it?" Caroline was my work wife. She has been with me since the start and knows almost everything about my family and me, and I also learned about her life. "Okay, come on in. Did you clear my calendar?" "Yes, all but the Wilson deposition in 2 days." We spent the next 30 minutes talking about Edna and Tom Price and the whole crazy mess. Caroline was shocked at what Edna had done, but she also clarified that even though this had been happening for months, Edna had never shirked her wifely or motherly duties. She pointed out that whenever it came up, I raved about what an amazing Edna was and how lucky I was to have such an insatiable wife. She also pointed out she had never missed an event or activity she was supposed to attend. So, despite her affair with Tom, there was rarely a time that Edna was not a loving wife and mother. Caroline was right. "Caroline, I am struggling badly that Edna's now used goods." And as much as I tried to keep my ego out of the equation, I was jealous and angry that she would do that to me. I owned her from the day we were married, just as she owned me. Caroline looked at me, thinking about what I had just said. I continued, "Doesn't every married man feel the same way? It is not sexist or chauvinist. Which is what marriage vows state. You forsake all others, all others. You belong to your spouse. There is no opt-out to have an affair, we belong to each other for life." Caroline stopped me. "Al, yes, most husbands and wives feel that way. You are right, marriage vows are meant to bind each other together for life. What Edna has done certainly broke those vows, but those vows mean nothing without true love and devotion. Edna has never wavered on either of those two, has she?" "No, she has always loved you, and this affair was not about love, and if it had gone on for 5 years, it would never have been part of it." As I listened, I had to agree. As I think back, Edna had always loved me. Her devotion to the kids and our life had remained incredible the whole time. Our life was good and never affected by her affair. Okay, I agree, so what do I do now? How do I justify keeping her after almost a year of betraying me with another man? Forgiveness. You love Edna. Has that changed at all since you found out? Is she a good wife? Is she a good mother? Could you ever find another woman that you could love more than Edna? I looked at Caroline. The answer to all those is I love her, and no one could ever replace her. There is the easy answer, and then comes the hard part: how do you move forward? That is another question altogether. Thanks, Caroline. I am clear now. I know what I have to do. I went back to my office and dressed for the day. I was not seeing clients today, but it was a business day, and I had work to do before I went home and confronted Edna. That I buzzed Caroline, "Can you order me breakfast and get Stella and you two to come here, please?" Stella Fries is one of our senior associates. Her specialty is divorce law, so I want her in on my plans. That I worked on my plan, writing everything down as if I were an attorney preparing a case. I worked for 30 minutes before my breakfast arrived. As sick as I was about what Edna had done, I was hungry, so the eggs, bacon, toast, juice, and coffee helped me refocus my efforts, once Stella was free. She and Caroline closed the door. My phones were still off, so I was in silent mode for the next hour, I went over my plan, discussing everything with Stella as Caroline took copious notes on everything said. Once we had ironed out my plan, Stella went off to create the real postnuptial agreement and the real divorce papers. I needed them when I sat down with Edna. Stella also had her marching orders for the lawsuits against the company and Tom Price as CEO for $15 million. Also, my case against Mr. Price for $10 million for alienation of affection. Stella also was to demand that Tom Price be terminated under their morals clause with no severance package or golden parachute. He was to get nothing. Stella was also to schedule a meeting with Mrs. Price to provide her with all the evidence we had on the affair in hopes that Marie Price would also divorce the sorry prick. We prepared to offer her free divorce legal services if needed. Once all that was in place and I had the legal documents and all the proof, it was time for me to go home and deal with Edna. I turned on my cell phone and was barraged by notifications of probably 100 messages and texts. My kids, Edna, and Stacy. I trashed all the messages from the kids and Edna and kept the messages from Stacy. I listened to Stacy's first message. Stacy's text: "Oh my God, Al, this is very, very bad. I loved Edna as a friend after hearing her tell me the story. I hate her now. That is all I can say. I am not sure I can stay in your employment. We have to talk once you have finished with Edna. Please do it fast." My text: "Stacy, don't do anything rash, I am coming home to have it out with Edna. Can you take the kids out for a couple of hours? I'll text you when it is safe to come home. We will order pizza for dinner tonight." Stacy's text: "Okay, we will go to the Children's Museum and wait to hear from you." I put everything in my large briefcase, gathered all my dirty clothes, and headed home. I planned to return to work the next day like nothing had happened. As I drove home, I repeatedly played the story in my head over and over. For the last 10 months, my wife had been her boss and lying to me about it. Never telling me anything about them. He wooed her with smooth talk and promotion. He also wanted her to be at his beck and call. Edna was in love with her new job and readily gave in to Tom, not realizing what she had done at the start, but as time went along, she began liking their time together. Well, guess what? She was wrong. The big questions were, how could we survive? Did I want to stay? Could I ever touch Edna again? I knew I loved her despite what she had done. It was almost like Edna was two different people. It was hard for me to understand her ability to be two people and her control over her emotions, which allowed her to exist this way. Edna needed long sessions with a counselor or psychiatrist to understand her mind. That was mandatory if we were to stay together. There would be new rules involving Stacy as an active partner in our child rearing that ensured that Edna was true to our future agreement. Everything had to be transparent to our children. They could not be affected in any way. As I turned down our street, I cleared my mind. I had a plan, and depending on Edna's attitude and honesty, we would survive this betrayal or divorce. Either way, tomorrow, life will go on. I parked in the garage, and Stacy met me at the mudroom door, pushing me back into the garage. Stacy looked bad. I knew she was distraught over what Edna had done to me and the family. Stacy had been a big part of our family for over 3 years. And this affected her badly, maybe even worse than me, in some ways. Al, this is bad, very, very, bad. I am not sure how you can survive this. I am very messed up about what Edna has done. A woman I admired and respected had destroyed all that for me, and I am not sure how I can survive working for you any longer. I am crushed. I pulled Stacy to me and held her. She was trembling, and she began to cry. I held her tight to me. Stacy was like one of my kids, just older and wiser. I wanted my girls to grow up to be like her. She was a tremendous influence on our children and our whole family. It would be devastating if she were to leave us, especially because of this mess. We needed her now more than ever. I gripped Stacy by the shoulders, pushed her away to arm's length, and saw a deep sadness on her face. Stacy, I know you are hurt. Your model mother fell off her pedestal and shattered into many pieces. But Stacy, now is when we need you even more. The next months will be extremely hard, and you are the stabilizing force we can all count on. I am not sure how this is going to play out. I have a plan, and you are an integral part of the plan. All of us need you. Once I come to an agreement with Edna, however, it goes, your support for the kids is essential. I hope Edna will still be part of our family. I love her and know she loves me, the kids, and you, Stacy. What she has done is horrible. Edna has a huge debt to repay to earn her way back into my life, and from what you have said, yours too. We hugged, squeezing each other tightly. I heard Stacy let out a deep sigh. Al, how could this happen? I really have no idea. I have asked myself that question 1,000 times. No answer comes to mind. Only Edna can shed light on that, and hopefully, she can clear that up for us. Okay, girl, get hold of yourself, put on your Mary Poppins hat, and grab your umbrella, it's showtime. Stacy chuckled, how can you be so calm? Years of closing arguments for clients both guilty and not guilty. They are all the same, there is a story. We only know part of it. Now it's time to hear the rest. Take the kids and give Edna and me a couple of hours. Get them some ice cream and go to the museum as you suggested. I will text you when you can come home. Pizza will be waiting as if nothing has happened. You okay with that for now? We both took a deep breath and entered the battlefield for the rest of my family's life. I heard the garage door open and knew Albert was home. That I was so nervous, not knowing what to do or how he would be toward me. The kids were here, so I felt somewhat safe. I knew I had been caught, and Albert knew about my affair with Tom. I felt sure that Stacy had told him of our conversation and my confession to her. So, he knew it all now. But how did Albert find out? Not that it mattered now. It was out and over. That was a good thing that I was stupid or so self-absorbed. I never thought of the evidence I left in my pants. Evidence that Stacy had seen and kept quiet until recently when she gave me cryptic signals about being careful. Looking back, how long did I think I could continue the affair? It never crossed my mind whether it would end or how it would end. I never thought it would end this way, being outed, and caught by my sweet, loving husband, who had come home to throw me out because I had destroyed our family. That I was sad, but I had no more tears. I had felt sorry for myself long enough. It was now time to confess with as much detail as Albert required. Then I will grovel on my knees, begging Albert to keep me in the family at any personal cost. I will do anything. I heard Stacy calling the kids, so I walked out of the bedroom to see what was happening. Stacy, where are you going with the kids? Stacy looked at me with disdain in her eyes and said nothing. The kids came running down the hallway and hugged me. Mommy, we are going to the museum with Stacy. Can you come? They all asked, pleading. Albert came out of the kitchen. He smiled, keeping up his charade. Daddy, we are going to the museum with Stacy. Mommy can't come, can you? They asked. Not today, children. Mommy and I have some things to discuss. You go with Stacy and be good. We will have pizza tonight when you get back. Okay. Yeah, pizza, they cheered. Stacy nodded at Albert and left without a word or looking at me. I thought she must hate me for what I have done. Now it was just Albert and me alone in our house. The Inquisition was about to begin. I looked at the kitchen clock. It was just after 2 in the afternoon. It was time. I went to my den and brought back a fresh bottle of Jack Daniels and 2 glasses. No luxury of ice today. We would drink the JD neat, feeling the burn in our throats. Edna was standing at the door, looking at the table, seeing my opened laptop and the pile of papers in several envelopes. I looked at her and saw fear on her face. Edna's breathing was slow. And she was fidgeting. That I spoke, and her head jerked up, looking at me. Edna, sit down. Do you want a drink? We only have JD today, neat. Edna moved to the seat I had ready for her. It was directly across from me, 4 feet away, just far enough that I could not reach out and strangle her easily. That I sat and poured 2 glasses of Jack, pushing a drink across the table in front of Edna. That I raised my glass. Edna, let's toast to honesty, the truth, and possible understanding this afternoon. Edna looked at me, and tears bubbled in her eyes. She raised her glass, and we clinked them together. I shot mine and put the glass down. Edna did not. Al, I will not drink. I want total mental acuity as we talk. Okay then, let's get started. Edna, as we sit here today, I am a crushed man. I cannot understand what you have done or why. I struggle with my love for you and my disgust and hatred for you simultaneously. I am at a complete loss. I hope you will be able to clear up my confusion and provide me with a reason that I do not throw you out in the street, take our children away from you and leave you with practically nothing. Edna cringed at my directness as the words rolled out of my mouth. I was never at a lack of words, so I continued. The pictures were grainy, but several things were clear. The $40,000 diamond ring on the hand was the one I had custom designed for you by Harry Winston. There was no mistaking it for someone else's ring. But when I saw the second and third angles, they confirmed it was you. They saved you from the hell I would have unleashed had I been present. This way, we can be civil with our discussion and determine an acceptable outcome for at least one but possibly both of us. Edna, I want to be clear about 2 things. 1, Edna, I still love you, even in the face of this monumental betrayal. 2, honesty is paramount. I am a skilled attorney, and if you lie to me, I will know it, and it will mean the end of our family. I will divorce you instantly. There will be no third chance since this is your second chance, to tell the truth. Why is this your second chance? Well, it is probably 40 or 50th chance since you have been lying to me for 10 months. So, this is your only chance, do knot it up. Edna cowered and picked up her glass of Jack. She wasn't as resolute as she thought. She took a big gulp and stared at me. Her breathing was rapid now. Edna, the floor is yours. I will not interrupt. I will listen intently to every detail of your. I was here at home being a doting father. So, Edna, please tell me, why did you cheat on me? Edna's head dropped, looking at the table, tears began streaming down, dripping on the table mat. Her hands went up to her face covering it as she sobbed. I sat and watched her display for about 10 minutes, then spoke. Edna, stop the fucking crying. You are not the injured one that should be crying. You should be smiling. You have fooled me for 10 months. So shut the fuck up and tell me your story. Edna, this is your only chance. If I get up from this table, it will be to walk out of your life forever, and I will never come back. Do you understand just how much trouble you are in right now? In a matter of minutes, you could be alone without a family, no husband, no children, nothing. Now pull yourself together and tell me, why? God. Why? Edna sat back and dried her face on her sleeve. She took another gulp of Jack and gripped one hand in the other. I stared at her, waiting. My patience were wearing thin now. Edna needed to start. Oh God, Albert was so angry. I can't blame him. I have cheated on him for 10 months, and now I must pay the piper. I drank a big gulp of Jack, and Albert refilled our glasses. I was going to need to drink after all. I looked up and wiped my face. I took a deep breath. Where to start? Albert, as hard as it may be to believe, I love you more now than the day 12 years ago after we made love in the back of your car by the lake. Not 1 minute of our life together have I not loved you. In contrast, I never loved Tom Price and never could. Every minute I was with Tom, I was in love with you. I know that sounds unbelievable, but what we did was not about love, infatuation, or anything emotional. I never realized at the start that I had been set up for 2 years. It was a game to Tom. It was a personal goal he set. Tom was devious, and by mentoring me and taking me along on his ride, telling me how good I was at my job, giving me little rewards, and finally grooming me for the VP job. He found my weakness. I wanted a big job, and only he could make that happen. By now, I was in a fog. Do you know how I get sometimes? Well, I was there at that moment. We do love each other, don't we? I thought about Edna's rhetorical question. Yes, we love each other. Despite last year, I still love Edna. If Edwin had never alerted me about her cheating, I would never have expected it to happen. There was never a sign to me, ever. As it turned out, though, Edna was sloppy, and Stacy suspected her of something. Stacy never told me, so the children and I had our loving wife and mother, just not as much as we all wanted or should have had. That is one significant issue with Edna's cheating. She cheated time away from the family that we can never return. I looked at Albert, hoping for reassurance, but he gave me none. That worried me. Maybe we weren't safe yet. Albert, after that night, things picked up. My guilt quotient grew fast. I tried to stop it at the beginning, but Tom would not. It would continue to happen, so I had to make sure that you and the kids never saw or felt anything more than that. He also had a family, so he had to be careful. In the third week, I knew this would not stop. Tom was so into me now that I had to slow him down. Tom would call me into his office multiple times some days, locking the door, and I was blowing him. Albert, you always benefited when I came home. So, I told Tom we had to limit the times, and he had to deal with it. We set a schedule that we could deal with, which switched the days each week and limited them to once a week every third week. There was a pattern, but it was hard to see. You taught me well, but unfortunately, Tom benefited from my experience. After the third week, it was just a routine part of my life at work. I felt nothing for Tom. And Tom felt nothing for me. I could have been a paid escort he ordered a couple of times a week, but nothing more. For the next 3 months, each week fit into the schedule, and life went on. I always ensured I was attentive at home, especially with you, Albert. My efforts were natural and always my pleasure. I love you, Albert, and our kids, so it was easy to do anything. In the 4th month, things changed. Tom wanted us to go out after work rather. One night Tom took me out for drinks at a bar. We danced and had a few drinks. A few other employees were there, so we had to be careful. It was dark early that night, so when those employees left, Tom led me out to the back alley. It was strange that we were outside in an alley. I felt cheap and didn't like it. Tom didn't seem to care. That was what happened last night. Albert, that is all my story. I will try to answer any questions you have. The one that is at the top of your mind is why. I have told you what happened, how it started and other details, but Albert, I cannot tell you why. I have thought about this for hours over the last 10 months and have never been able to produce an answer. Albert, in my life, I had everything I could want in a husband, in my children, friends, and family. There was nothing for which I could ever want. But in my work life, I was always mediocre. I was always in the background. Never standing out or shining. When I was picked 3 years ago to work in the management training program and being mentored by senior executives, I was ecstatic. I felt I was finally accomplishing something that was of value. I was treated with respect, I had some authority and was watched over by the company's CEO. You know how we talked about it many times. I felt fulfilled in my business life. Never during this time did I feel that anything like what has happened was in the works. I was either blind or naive or both. Never in the first 2 years did anything ever happen that would have given me a clue of what was to come. I was impressed with Tom's business skills and knowledge and wanted to stay as close to him as possible to glean everything I could from him. We did get closer, and I suppose we did flirt some, but not overtly, and there were never any overtures or inappropriate behavior. Then the day came. Albert, you remember I was over the moon when I was offered the VP position. I could not believe it. Finally, after all my hard work, I got a reward that I knew I deserved. You were just as excited as I was, and we celebrated. We were so worn out we couldn't go to work the next day. The new job started a month later, and that is when things changed. So, the answer to why, I still cannot answer, but if I had to say one thing, it was payback to Tom for giving me the big job and respect I yearned for. QQQQQQ, Albert, as you can see. There was nothing about you or our family. It was a weakness in my character that valued my job, not more than my family, but it was the other half of me that I needed to feel complete. Tom saw that in me and worked his trap on me, capturing me. He never said anything about owing him. He just decided to take what he wanted, and he knew I could not quit now that I had the job I had worked for so many years to get. I was his and could not stop it. I took a deep breath and poured a full glass of Jack, filling Albert's drink too. That I raised my glass. I got it out without collapsing, baby. I am so sorry and ashamed of myself for being such a weak person that could not walk away from my job to save my marriage. I am so ashamed. I leaned my head back and poured the full glass down my throat. I set the glass on the table and stood up. What? What did she say? Edna was leaving, giving up, walking out, not fighting for us. I was shocked. Edna walked down the hall to the bathroom. I sat there stunned at her complete submission and defeat. That I waited. Edna had taken less than 30 minutes to tell me her story. Now without discussion or a plea to remain my wife, she was giving up. I had questions and needed answers. That I heard Edna down the hall as she came out of the bathroom. What was she doing? Then she came up the hallway, rolling a large suitcase behind her. Edna, what the are you doing? I demanded. Pissed at her attitude. Albert, I know you don't want me now that another man has used me, I understand, so I am leaving. So, Edna, you say you love me and our children, yet you are willing to walk out and abandon us without fighting to save our family. How can you do that? I just don't get it. Edna stopped dead with a look of shock on her face. She stared at me with bewilderment, like she had no idea what to do. Then she spoke. No, I don't want to run to Tom. I never want to see him again. I hate him almost as much as I hate myself. We did this together, destroying what is more important to me than anything, you, Albert, and our family. I do not deserve to be here anymore. So I should leave. Bullshit, Edna, bullshit. You have never quit at anything in your life. Part of that drive has brought us to this point. So, you are not a quitter. Are you now so defeated and weak that you are unwilling to fight for what you say you love most in the world? This is all bullshit. Edna, I am not saying that I want you back or that the children will accept you once they find out what you have done. It is going to be hard for you. It is going to take a lot of work. But if we are worth it as you seem to think we are, you have to stay and work to earn. You will pay your debt to me and all of us. There will be conditions, and you will have restrictions. Your life will be different. You will no longer be the queen with the big job. Edna, how will you deal with that? But one way or another, Edna, if you want to be in our family, you must stay and work, not run and hide. We have to decide between us if we want this together, then we have to make our life work together. Edna, if you don't want that, you can walk out. Be so weak that you will give up your family and me, the man you betrayed who stood by you all these years, loving you wholeheartedly. Edna stood looking at me with a confused, pained look. Albert, I don't know what to do. I don't deserve you. I love you and don't want to walk away. But I feel so ashamed. How do I face you and Stacy Daly now that you know what I have done? And the kids deserve a better mother than me. I have no morals. They will see me for who I am, a terrible mother. Albert, even worse, how do I face myself? Oh God, I don't know what to do. Edna took a breath and looked down as tears rolled down her cheeks. Then she looked back at me and went on. Albert. I love you. I love our children. I love our life. I hate what I've done. How do we live through this? How do we make this work, and how can you ever trust me again? I don't see how that can work. You must hate me. My God, I cheated on you for almost a year with my boss. I'm a bad person. How can you want to stay with me? Edna slumped into a chair and began to sob. Edna's self-destructive words were hard to hear, though I understood how she felt. I do hate what she did and who she did it with. I hate that Edna felt our relationship was not strong enough for her to come to me for help to get her out of this mess initially. But I also knew that her ego had fed everything. Being the VP, being wanted and desired by Tom, and the respect she received from me, even in the face of her betrayal, made her stronger and more confident, feeding her subconscious and making Edna think that she could get away with what she was doing. I could hear it all in the words Edna was saying now, but finally, I was seeing a distraught woman full of remorse, not the strong woman Edna had been through her tenure. Edna was the woman I married, falling off her pedestal. Crashing back into reality. Thank God, now we have a chance to make this work. That I stood and walked around the table to Edna. She was crumbling, sobbing loudly, and shaking. I reached for her, pulling her up to me and holding her. I said nothing. We stood there a while. My shirt was soaked when Edna stopped crying. I held her until she had calmed, and her breathing was nearly normal. Edna pulled away and looked up at me. There was confusion on her face. I added to that when I leaned down and kissed her. She tried to turn away, but I held her tight, kissing her. Her eyes met mine and never looked away as they pleaded for my forgiveness. I broke the kiss and sat her on the chair by the table. Baby, it is time for us to talk seriously about our future. There will be no more self-pity or negative talk about how bad a person you are. You have to deal with those thoughts on your own or through a therapist you will be seeing. It is time to talk about the part you will play in this family. Edna sat silently. The look on her face was part disbelief and part confusion. I knew I had to make my next statements clear. Where she stood with me, thus how I would treat her, Stacy, and the children. I placed my briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside were the divorce papers, the postnuptial agreement, my letter, and legal separation papers. The next few minutes will determine which of these papers Edna will see. And we will put them into play. Edna looked at me nervously and began wringing her hands together. She finally spoke again. Albert, what is in your briefcase? I took out the postnuptial agreement and slid her copy across the table. Edna, you have made a grave error in judgment that has affected our family and could have destroyed it. I have to wonder about your future decision-making, so you have made me create this postnuptial agreement to protect our family and me against any future bad judgments. If you should ever cheat on this family again, you will leave the family after the automatic divorce with virtually nothing. Only the bare necessities will cover your head, feed you and provide you with transportation. You will permanently lose me, your children, and most likely all your friends, and will no longer be welcome in mine and the children's home. Edna, you have no choice, so please sign this document now. I laid a pen on the agreement and sat back as she read it. It was a hard document, but if Edna had been honest with me and never planned to cheat again, it would never be a threat to her, only a reminder of what could happen. Sadness overtook her as she read the paper. She looked at me. Albert, this is very hard, but it is unnecessary. I will never cheat on you again. Edna, I believe what you say, but this protects me and the children's future. Before I found out what you had done, I never thought you could ever cheat on us, but you did. Sign the agreement, Edna, and let's move on. A single tear rolled down her cheek as she signed it, pushing it back to me. Second, I placed the legal separation and divorce papers on the table. Edna, as further protection, you must sign both of these documents. They will be held in my office safe forever and will only be executed if you ever cheat again. If you don't, they will never see the light of day. Once again, sign the documents. You have no choice. Edna looked at me. Are you divorcing me, Albert? No, Edna, I love you, but you have made it necessary for me to protect our family, so these documents are necessary for us to move forward. Please sign them. Edna signed them and pushed them back across the table. The last paper was the letter I had written. It was sealed in an envelope and time-stamped today on the flap. I laid it on the table in front of Edna. This is a letter I wrote last night that will never be read by you or anyone unless you make a bad judgment again. My feelings will be the same on that day as when I wrote this, so if I am forced to execute any of these documents, I will provide the letter for you to read. Otherwise, it will never see the light of day again. Edna sat softly, crying, "So Albert, you want me to stay? Do you still love me? You want me to be the mother of our children?" "Yes, Edna. I never stopped loving you. I know those words are harsh, but that is what you were, Edna, you must admit it. He owned you, not me." Edna began to sob, so I stopped talking, knowing she could not hear anything I was saying. Now that I poured her a glass of Jack and pushed it to her. "Have a drink and stop crying. Once we finish this, we will not discuss it again until that fateful day that I catch you cheating again, and your world will cease to exist. If you never cheat, then nothing more will ever happen." That I put all the papers back in my briefcase, locked it and put it to the side. "Now, Edna, there is one last thing that we need to do before Stacy and the kids come home." I stood and walked around the table, taking her hand, and leading her down the hall. I pulled the suitcase along with us. When we got to the bedroom door, I handed Edna the handle to the suitcase. "First, put your things away, and I will return in a minute." I walked out and went to my car. I got the bag out and brought it back inside. That I in the bedroom, Edna put her clothes away and stored the suitcase. She sat on the bed and waited. That I walked in with the bag and sat it on the bed. "Edna, it is time for you to return to my. We have about 40 minutes before the pizza will be here, and the kids will be home. You have that much time to make me forget what you did with Tom Price." Confused, Edna asked, "What do you want me to do?" "Do what you did with Tom. Your decision." Edna looked shocked. "Come on, Edna, time is wasting." This was awkward for her. Edna didn't want to relive anything about her and Tom, but I had told her to do that. Edna moved in front of me. After the end of I looked at the clock. The kids and pizza would arrive in 15 minutes. After a quick shower, the doorbell rang. I went to the door, and it was the pizza guy with 2 large pizzas. As I brought the pizza to the kitchen, Edna came out, and Stacy and the kids walked in. Stacy looked at us and smiled, wondering if we had resolved things. I smiled back at her, assuring her things were okay. The kids ran to us, and we all hugged, and they started clambering about the museum. We ate pizza and talked as if none of Edna's betrayal had happened. After dinner we all played the game of life. What an ironic thing. Later Edna put the kids to bed, and I talked with Stacy, explaining to her that things were okay, and she needed to stay, and we all wanted her here. Then Edna sat and talked about what was next. Edna needed to see a therapist. There would be punishment and restriction that I had not worked out yet but would come up within a few days. That I explained about the lawsuits against the company and Tom Price. I told Edna that Marie Price was being told about the affair. I was pleasantly surprised when there was no reaction about Tom, but concern about his wife and children. I thought maybe Edna really did have no feelings for Tom. That was a good feeling. I stayed home that day, and once the kids were at school Edna and I ate with Stacy and discussed what was going to happen. She agreed to stay and help any way she could. Edna and I looked for a therapist for us, and one that could help her understand what had happened. That afternoon I went with Edna to her office to clean out her desk. She warned the office we were coming, so that Tom would know and would stay clear. People were sad that Edna was leaving but understood that she had made a family decision to resign. That night Edna and I, as if none of this had ever happened. We expressed our love freely without reservation. Love was in the air again. The end. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. No part of this story can be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means without written permission from the author. All characters are fictitious, and any similarity to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental unless otherwise stated. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching. Leave comments, put likes, share with friends and subscribe to the channel.